Sairam. You're listening to Sai Soul 100, a weekly podcast series with soul, or stories of unconditional love, shared by devotees of Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba in celebration of his 100th birthday. We invite you to listen in on these motivational stories of his constant loving presence in devotees' lives, offered at his lotus feet by the Sri Satya Sai International Organization USA, Mid-Atlantic region. Welcome to Sai Soul 100.
Sairam, dear listeners, welcome to Sai Soul 100. Our guest today is Lawrence Cohen, who is joining us from New Hyde Park, Long Island, New York. He'll be sharing his experiences of feeling Swami's presence. Sairam, Lawrence, thank you for joining us.
Sairam.
Please share your story.
Yeah, okay. What I would start with is the first and probably the most intense. In the beginning, I wasn't really on a spiritual path. I met my wife at work, and we met at work, and after a while, you tell you the short version, we wanted to get married. At first, I went to her parents, and they said, "I'd like to marry your daughter," and no, and that was the simple answer. No argument, no excitement, just no. Okay, but they were Sai Baba devotees, and that came into play because shortly after that, I had a dream, and this was intense. In the dream, I was with Manjula, my wife, now my wife, but I was with her, and Sai Baba appeared. And for one thing, it was intense. He looked at me intensely, not angry, but like he could burn a hole through me. That's what his eyes were doing. But the more amazing thing is that it was unexpected. It was an external presence that came into my dream. And all the dreams you've had, you can't surprise yourself because a dream is your own brain telling you a story. But this was somebody external who came into my dream and looked at me so intensely. And this is something over the years I cannot forget and I cannot explain away. There has to be something divine or something special about this. So that has always been like the foundation of my faith.
At that time, you were not a devotee of Swami, right?
Yeah, no, I would say not. You know what it is? I think I'm a little bit unusual because most people I've met that are devotees, either they're Indian or have an Indian background, and karma, reincarnation, guru is a perfectly normal thing to them. Or it's Westerners who are pursuing something. They're looking for God. They're reading Eastern spirituality, learning meditation. I wasn't doing any of these things. I just met this nice woman at work. And marrying her, well, Sai Baba was part of the package. Oh, okay. And the first time when she went to India, well, after I had talked to her parents, when I had the dream, they realized, hey, something's going on. Go ask Sai Baba for permission to get married. I wasn't thinking spiritually. I just thought, well, if you're talking about marrying me, this is my business, so I'll go with you. So my first trip to India was because, well, I wanted to get married. When we were there, I'm thinking at a certain point, this was in Whitefield, and he was giving some kind of a talk, which was just down the road from where you normally get darshan. And if we went to the talk at this point that was crowded, we would have sat outside, listened on loudspeakers, and it just didn't seem worth bothering. We figured, well, he's got to come home sooner or later. And we'll wait here for when he comes back, meaning at the area where they have darshan, the open field in Whitefield. And the path in, if you come in the gate, it's kind of like an L-shaped road. It goes in and then there's a turn, and then the road leads into where he lives or he stays. We figured we'll sit by the bend in the road because the car has to slow down for the turn at least. There was somebody else there that Manjula knew, this woman. And I was all new to this stuff, but they knew bhajans. So they just sat there doing bhajans. I guess I must have joined in where I could. We ended up sitting for like maybe 3 hours. Finally, Sai Baba's car shows up and not just slowed down, it stopped. He opened the window and had the light turned on in his car and this big fat smile on his face. And remember, we both came 8,000 miles to ask him, can we get married? So what did I do? I just stared and said nothing, like dumbfounded. And she had a letter that she had written. The envelope was in her hand. She said, "We love you, Swami." He said, "Yes, I know." And she didn't think to give him the letter. He had to reach out and take it from her. So that was like an amazing darshan, but we both came 8,000 miles to ask something and both forgot to ask. So, and anyway, the rest of the trip wasn't all that eventful. We didn't get any kind of permission or anything. We went home still wondering what's going on and what's going to happen. Several months later, at one point, Manjula asked me, "When did you start working here?" I said, "Last March." "Why?" "Well, that was March 78 when I started working there. December 77, like 3 months earlier, she had been to India with her parents, had an interview with Swami, and she was in her 20s. And of course, a young woman in her 20s, not married, oh my goodness. So they asked Sai Baba, I think her father must have asked, what's going to happen? Our daughter is not married. He said, oh, she'll meet her husband in March. And Manjula's father, being smart, he said, March of what year? And he said, oh, this coming March. In December, when he said this, we had never met. March is when I got there and met her. And we didn't instantly fall in love in the next 5 minutes. That took a little while. A couple of months later in August, she was sleeping at a friend's house on Long Island, her friend Debbie. And she had a dream. And like Baba came to her in darshan and she said, Swami, I want to marry Lawrence. Please say yes. And he just kept walking, walked on. But he came around a second time. She said, Swami, can I marry Lawrence? Please don't say no. And he just kept walking. He came around a third time. She said, Swami, I want to marry Lawrence. Whatever you say, that's what I'll do. And he said, yes. Then when you get a dream like this, like, is it real? Did this really happen? Well, her friend Debbie, who was over in the next bed, is the type that you could ring the phone 42 times, have a 16-piece band playing, and have a construction crew blasting outside, and she would sleep through it. So she said, well, I'm just going to say Debbie's name once, and if she wakes up, I know this is real. So she just said, Debbie. Debbie sat up and said, yes, Manjula.
Oh, wonderful. That's when you came back and her parents knew it was a yes and that you move forward with the marriage.
And of course, her parents were devotees, and if he said it's okay, then there's nothing to question. But a few years later, attending a center, I don't know what it was, if something happened at the center or I was in a bad mood, but I went home thinking, oh, who needs this? Why do we bother? Why do we keep going to the center? Well, apparently you're supposed to go, because that night I had a dream, and I remember the quote where Baba said to me was, I want you with me at the end of this. And I understood immediately the end of this means at the end of this life. And I think what he was telling me is, no, don't stray from the path and don't wander off. And I want you to stay with me. At one point, we were attending a center on Long Island, and the people who owned the home said, we need the space. We can't have the center here anymore. And that was about the same time that we bought this house. And we have a nice big basement. We have the room. Why don't you come to our house? Well, this is another example of Baba pulling me in, because if you go to a center, oh, the weather's bad, let's not go this evening, or oh, I'm feeling tired. Well, what excuse do I have when it's downstairs? You can't go to the basement. So it's like he kind of removed any excuse I have to try and avoid the center. So it's kind of like he's been like most people are going after God. It's more like he came and got me. Then there were a couple of experiences in person. There was a time we were in darshan, and I had happened to get the front row that day, and didn't seem like anything special, but he came by and he said, where are you from? And I said, New York. And oh, okay, that's nice, he said. A little while later, this is before they built Kulvan Hall. So instead of, after darshan is bhajans, instead of sitting there for bhajans, I just walked around, and I was standing in front of the Purna Chandra by myself, just had wandered over there. During bhajans, Baba got up, he came out, and this the Purna Chandra would be the women's side. He came out of the darshan area, came over and stood a few feet from me. And he said, where are you from? I said, oh, New York. And he said, oh, yes, you already told. So okay. And at the time, it still didn't mean that much to me. A separate thing, we had noticed when we were back in our room, the days that we did bhajans and Gayatri, he seemed to come closer to us in darshan. The days when we didn't get such a good seat, he wasn't close to us. But I didn't associate that with what he said. So this is like 8 months later. I'm at home and I meditated and I thought about this. We had a separate room with the altar in it where I did meditation. And there was also, it happened to be a TV in the same room. But I was meditating there and I thought about this, which had happened 8 months earlier. And he said, you already told. I assume that meant you already told me where you're from. Maybe he meant you've already been told, meaning I showed you when you do bhajans and you do Gayatri and whatever mantras that you're closer and you get better results. And when you don't do it, you don't, you're not so close. And then I thought to myself, well, if this is real, if I'm understanding this properly, have Manjula come in and interrupt me. But wouldn't you know it, like a minute later, she pokes her head in the door. Can I come in here and watch TV? So that was like 8 months later. I finally got the message. When you do your sadhana, I'll come closer. And it only took me 8 months to catch on. Okay. Another experience I had, and also in darshan, I was sitting somewhere in the middle, not any especially good seat or anything. And this must have been a holiday. I don't remember what, but I remember there was a lot of decorations and a lot of things on the veranda. He was behind some of the decorations, so you couldn't really see him. And I guess he was talking to somebody, but he was there for a good long while. It must have been at least 15 minutes. Other people started getting up and walking out. I didn't, because I know, well, you're not really supposed to leave until he goes inside. That's when darshan is over. But after a while, even I wondered what was happening, and I got up and started walking out. But then I noticed since I had walked over a little, I could see behind the decorations, whatever they were. I could see, oh, he's still standing there on the veranda. Let me sit down. And I sat down. There are benches on the side of the men's side. And I happened to sit next to somebody, like a friend of a friend, an acquaintance. Anyway, so after a little while, he was done talking to whoever, whatever he was talking about. He came off the veranda and started walking around again. And by the garage, I don't know if you know, this is close to the building on the men's side. By the garage, there's a whole bunch of men in white. I guess this is the teaching staff. He went to them. He started walking through them, not just walked in front of them, but they split, let him walk through. And he came back out again. And he did this a second time and a third time. While he's doing this, I'm in the middle of darshan somewhere. It's got to be at least 100 feet away or 200 feet away or something. I'm on the bench just sitting there for some reason going, wow, wow. Just waves of energy must have been coming over me. I turned for a second. I look at the guy next to me. He's sitting there wiping a tear from his eye. So it wasn't just me, but it was just, with this, you realize you don't need front row. You don't need to be standing next to him. Here I am, like I guess now it's called Van Hall, but I was like half a hall away from him, just feeling energy coming over me. But it doesn't even have to be Sai Baba. We took a cruise and I was in a town in Greece this past summer, and we're walking around on the street. There's a bunch of shops, and somebody we know from the ship said, oh, go inside that church. This is a nice church. So I walked inside. The minute I walked in, I just felt peace. It was like, wow, outside was chaos, and here is I mean, you can feel the same energy. It's not just Sai Baba, but it's God in everything, everywhere. You can feel it in churches, and so I was at somebody's house who was a Sai Baba devotee, and I said that there was a really nice one of the rooms. It's a really nice room, and my daughter told me the room's not that good. It's just that it's the rooms that they meditate in, so you're feeling the vibes. But you don't need to be standing next to him or get an interview to feel him, to feel the energy.
How has that energy transformed you? How do you hold on to that energy?
Well, for one thing, I've learned to recognize it as opposed to I'm in a good mood today. It's a different kind of feeling. And just I know that something is there. It's real. I said the most intense was my first dream where there was an external presence in my dream, but I've learned to recognize the energy. And, just, it's real. There's something there.
It's like an invisible string that's keep pulling you towards
Yeah,
him. Yes.
yeah. And I said that dream where he said, "I want you with me at the end of this." Like he's telling me, "No, you're gonna keep coming." Yeah. There's one dream I should tell you that my wife really liked. I had this dream, but I don't know if you've seen enough cartoons, but but he talks to you in a way you can relate, okay? But in a cartoon, sometimes there'll be somebody, he'll unzip himself and open it up, and there's somebody else inside.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I had a dream where I go to somebody standing behind a counter, and for some reason in the dream I said, "Are you God?" They unzipped, and inside the costume was Sai Baba, and he said, "Yes, and so are you."
Wow, what a powerful message.
Yeah, and this the weird form it came in. I don't know if you know, like a wolf in sheep's clothing kind of unzipping, if you've seen old cartoons. Yeah, it came in that kind of a form, but yeah, but he actually came and told me that. Oh, and another one, they're not all powerful messages. One time I was sitting with the family, my wife's family, which was all devotees, and kind of half joking, I just said, "Oh, Baba doesn't talk to me. He doesn't even come and say hello." That evening, that night, I had a dream. There's a door. I open the door, and there's a stairway. A few steps up is Sai Baba standing there. He looks at me and says, "Hello." That's it. So, like, I complained he doesn't even say hello, so he came and said hello. That was the dream.
Wow, you really are deeply connected to Swami, whether you know it or not.
Yeah, it's like no matter what I think, no matter what I want to do about it, yeah. But that I just thought was just so funny. I complained he doesn't say hello, so I had a dream that night, and he just said hello.
So many beautiful, touching stories of how Swami's presence is felt by you. And in some ways, in many ways, he's showing you that he is aware of your thinking. He knows you, so he's guiding you. And he has said, "I want you with me."
With me at the end of this, yeah. And by the way, and also that you don't need the physical presence of Sai Baba. Because, by the one thing I have forgotten to mention with all of this, I did have an interview. Manjula and I and the two kids, when they were little, we had it. But all of these experiences somehow mean more to me.
Brother Lawrence, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your stories of how you feel his presence and how you feel guided by him. Whether you're kicking and screaming or voluntarily going, or you're thinking or asking a question and he comes to you and guides you, telling you that he's right there with you. It's very powerful message that's being shared here. So thank you for being with us and sharing your story.
No problem.
Sairam, dear listeners, thank you for joining Sai Soul 100 with Lawrence Cohen. I am Prabha Swaminathan. Until next time, Jai Sairam.